RRR. When I come into these reviews, I always have the exact same conditions. I don't read up on it, don't research about the film until after the video is out, and I try to give my honest thoughts. The reason is to prevent falling down rabbit holes, and if I'm going to be doing this on a weekly basis, it gets real difficult real fast to keep a pace with a weekly movie structure. So let's do it. RRR was one of those films I have zero ideas about coming in, and I know it's like an Indian film and that's it. The story concerns the collision of two guys, Raju, an officer in Delhi, and Bhim, a tribal man who's trying to save his sister who was enslaved by colonialists. So that's the basic premise. Two dudes swept up by the vicissitudes of fate, fated to become enemies because they're looking for different things, which surprisingly end up being each other. I realized that I didn't even explain what the heck of the plot is, so I'm going to do it really briefly. Okay, so we got Raju, and then we got Bhim. Bhim's trying to save his sister. Raju is trying to find, I guess, Bhim, or somebody trying to kill the governor, who's like the main bad guy. And there's a section where they're like friends, and that sort of sets up the emotional tension that's supposed to eventually happen when it breaks. The first hour and a half is like this long build to this emotional section. It's just them being cool dudes with each other. And then what ends up happening is they find out who each other really are, and Bhim goes off to save his sister, and then they make a run for it, and then Raju is being tortured because he did not torture Bhim sufficiently. I might have the sequences mixed up. It's very difficult to. It's in my mind, but it's so. And then there's something about smallpox, and then Bhim saves Raju, and a whole bunch of things blow up. And does he like descend? Does he become a god? I don't remember. It's so hard. I don't know what did I. It was so fast. It was a very fast 3 hours. It's hard to explain the insane forward momentum of this film. Like, it starts off with enslavement, and then you think, okay, I get the plot. And then it hard cuts to him taking on dozens, possibly hundreds of people. And then they become best buds after saving a kid by shaking hands underwater. Then they destroy a woman's tires by throwing a bunch of nails in front of her car. Then they beat a bunch of racist dandies in a dance-off. Then they infiltrate a compound with wild animals. He throws a leopard at some guy. They fusion dance into a running juggernaut, and he no-scopes double kills an entire English compound. He attaches a bunch of grenades to arrows and blows up a platoon of soldiers. Like, it just keeps escalating, and there's so much forward momentum. Despite being humongous, there's so much forward stuff packed into the story that expands on the general feeling and lore of the world. It feels like it's this wall of speed ramped slow-mo that whenever they want to play the action up, they ramp up the shutter so it constantly flies between super slow, smooth, and super fast. It's like watching a CSGO montage for 3 hours. Big ups to the style of action. The slow-mo speed crank method can be a little obnoxious, but it takes a lot of creative work to think of completely new ways to present action every single time. It's like over-accentuated, overpowering, super definitive. Yeah, sometimes the green screen and masking guy is on break, but like, I get it. The thing about RRR is like the film has this interesting color palette. Like, everything is super saturated, and it feels like it's meant for TV. Like, it's colored for commercials. So commercial coloring, right, is a little bit different because it's meant for a whole bunch of TVs with a wide variety of ranges. So you can't really just trust a specific monitor control. You like crank up the exposure, you lower the shadows, and change the curves. That leads to these really full-bodied skin tones and overly defined costumes and colors. And it doesn't help that some of these scenes happen in these medium shot environments with these extreme shallow depth of fields that half the time are green screened, because I understand the environment wasn't available, but why would you draw attention to it? Because like it seems like it's very much green screen, and so this is how this is how you know the film is art, because I can't figure it out. Like, I can't figure it out. The ADR kind of threw me for a loop because I don't know Hindi, so I thought maybe this was dubbed over in another language and I can't tell the difference. But apparently there's just a whole bunch of like audio in the film where sections of it are ADR'd and other sections aren't, and it was really jarring.
वो हर जगह टोन कर रहेगा.
And so usually when you have ADR like that, you usually have like one or two things. Like one, you're like new to filmmaking, right? Or two, you have a really complex production process where you can't get everyone for the shoot at the right times. Like that's something you're going to deal with a lot when you're dealing with a huge amount of extras. They don't talk about extra management for the most part. Like when you have tons of extras who aren't contractually obligated to remain on a project for X periods of time because you're only going to pay them per shoot. They're going to be doing other things, or other jobs, other shoots. So when you find out your footage is no good for whatever reason and you can't get them back, you might think, okay, let's fix what we have in post, including the audio. A lot of the ADR scenes seem to be these sort of like busy scenes. So I wonder if that's the case. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's really hard to like pin down this film. There's so much stuff happening, right? There's something interesting, however, about like the way in which it's so hard to condense this into like 2 pages. There's something about the way in which the thing is structured. It feels like 3 different film arcs smashed together to create this longer epic, because there have been moments where I thought, a lot has happened. It feels like it's wrapping up. And then I only find out it's like a third of the way through. There's a mid-movie flashback that goes into Raju's origins and why he does it. And, it makes sense. Divide and conquer. Raju's plans are set back by the racism of this institution. The whole point of the outro is to show, wow, this guy is legit. But he's still not being promoted for his efforts. And I don't know. The thing is, like, you know for a fact that there's more to this guy than not. I thought perhaps Raju's origin is that he's a migrant worker, but he wanted to bring, maybe he wanted to bring prosperity to his village or something, and that's why he has such a fixation on succeeding or something. But no, he wanted guns. He wanted to arm every person in his village because he's a revolutionary, and this guy here is running around with the Magnum from Halo Combat Evolved, just blasting people left and right. I don't know how to like summarize this film in such a way, but like, and I feel like that's the kind of the core conceit of what the film wants to do, right? It wants to talk about like brotherhood in the face of great evil, and it feels like this like mythologized colonial struggle ramped up to 11. Like Western films have this kind of stuff, right? The Patriot or Braveheart. Oh, they're both Mel Gibson films. It's kind of like a mythologized film in the sense like, what if William Wallace could actually shoot lightning out of his ass? And then you think about it, like, well-defined lighting textures, action overemphasis, political mythos, great men historical renditions, architectonic emphasis on empire. Like, this is a Baroque painting. This film's a Baroque painting. Like, this is what happens when you teach Poussin speed ramping and he learns fusion. This, literally no difference.